Sri Gaurav Gogoi.
Sir, with your permission, I would like to speak from here.
Right, all right.
Sir, the discipline of planning and architecture is a very important discipline given the context of our present country. Our country is rapidly urbanizing. Young people are leaving their villages and migrating to cities in large numbers. When they migrate to cities, one of the common problems they face is of housing. And urban housing, especially for the urban poor, will become a major challenge in the future. As Honorable Minister rightly said, if we don't plan for the future challenges right now, we will be faced with a ticking time bomb where we will have an overflowing population without access to the basic public services that they need. So in this context, the School of Planning and Architecture plays a very important role. It is one of the few academic institutions teaching students the discipline of urban planning, teaching students the technology tools that come handy when it comes to urban planning like GIS and others. And it is very important that as our population is expanding, be it in the villages, be it in the small towns, be it in cities or mega cities across the country, planning needs to be an important part of our envisioning process. We need planning for our villages. Where will the drains be? Where will the sewage be? Where will the parks be located? We need the same kind of planning and foresight for our towns. Where will our garbage dumps be? In terms of a heavy downpour of rainfall, how do we take care of problems of waterlogging? We need the same kind of discipline when it comes to problems of megacities. What is our solution towards public transport? What is our solution towards parking? How do we decongest our roads? In all of these problems of the present and problems of the near future, we need institutions of excellence, and the School of Planning and Architecture, as said by the Honorable Minister, established in 1959, becoming a deemed university in 1978, plays a very important role. Sir, this bill has a very noble intention. As Honorable Member Saugato Rai said, it is not a controversial bill. We do want our institutions to become institutions of excellence, especially those students who are in Bhopal and Vijayawada. They have graduated and they are awaiting their degrees, and it is the right of the government to look after the plight of the students there and confer the degrees to those students. Another important part of this bill is that it institutes a council for the School of Planning and Architecture. This council will comprise of representatives from the government, representatives from the academia, representatives of the public administration, and it will function under the leadership of the Honorable President of India, who has been accorded the high position of visitor. Of course, there are numerous benefits to a bill like this. One of the objectives of the bill is to promote education and research. And that is something that all of us agree, that when it comes to higher education institutes in India, specifically in the field of research, we are not able to produce research that is of international recognition. Sir, it is very disappointing for a young member of parliament like me when I see my peers and I see young scientists going to universities outside of India. They are getting the necessary support for research. They are winning awards, winning fellowships, but the same kind of necessary research support and academic environment is not provided to institutes in India, especially in the field of higher education. And that is why many of our higher education institutes, despite boasting of reputed faculty, despite being proud of an amazing student community, do not produce enough research which then helps propel these universities to higher rankings in the global fora of universities across the world. So therefore, of course, it is a very important initiative to promote research. But the bill does not specifically address that how will research be promoted. Will specific grants be given to researchers? Will it encourage joint research projects between institutes in India and outside? Those of our students and professors who are currently working or teaching in universities outside of India, who want to come back as either faculty or as guest faculty, will they be given the necessary research support? That is not mentioned. And sir, if we want, as this bill says, for the School of Planning and Architecture to provide global leadership, then global leadership is not possible without engaging our global Indian diaspora. And wherever the professors of planning and architecture are, we must provide them the necessary incentives to come back and bring their vast experience to India and teach our students, as well as encourage our students in the area of research. Too often, sir, our students go to the market and buy research projects. It has become a transaction, and research is done as very matter of fact, without much discipline and without much vigor. So it is very important that if we want the School of Planning and Architecture to be a global leader in research, then specific research initiatives should have been highlighted in this bill. Similarly, sir, if we do ask for global leadership, it is not possible to be a global leader unless you have a global faculty, unless you have a global student body, unless you have global best practices. Now, how do we encourage those Indian professors who are earning really high salaries, teaching the very same subjects in universities across? How do we encourage them to come back? How do we motivate them to come back? They would want to come back, but they would want some necessary support services for their spouses, for their children. What kind of necessary support will we provide to them? For the students who come and want to study and want to be part of this Global Leadership Institute, what kind of necessary support will we provide to them? Sir, there are many meritorious students in India. India is the land of Vishwakarma. India is the land of designers. India is the land of urban planners. And specifically coming from the Northeast, I know the entire community of young people are excellent in design and have a very strong creative bent of mind. And it is important that in the fellowships and scholarships that these three schools of planning and architecture will provide, they must have certain criteria which will benefit students who come from poor areas, which will benefit female students, which will benefit students from a scheduled caste and scheduled tribal opportunities. Because, sir, the eligibility criteria of this university is quite stringent. The fees are quite high. These are only three institutes in the country. So if somebody has to come from a remote village in Nagaland and study in Bhopal, he has to incur a lot of fees. So the scholarship and fellowship programs must I say, have specific criteria which will enable the student body within these three institutes to be diverse, to come from diverse backgrounds of gender, of race, of caste, and of economic background. But at the same time, sir, there are certain limitations or certain questions that this bill does not address. One of the limitations is that of the problem of fake universities. There are so many universities in India which are offering fake degrees. They are operating under fake names. And even if you Google School of Planning and Architecture, thousands of institutes will come up which have some fraud name at the beginning and then say School of Planning and Architecture. So how will this bill really penalize those who are the promoters of these fake universities, those promoters who give fake degrees, and because of which so many students have a problem? They spend a lot of money in tuition, they spend a lot of money in hostels, and after end of 3 years, 4 years, they realize that this university is not legitimate, is not worthy enough to grant degrees, and then they have to go to the High Court and then challenge the university, and their fees are never recovered. So how will this bill protect those students from all the various fake universities out there in our country and all the fake degrees which are being provided? That is not taken care of. Second thing, sir, in the board, if you look at the composition of the board is comprised of members of the government, the board comprises of members of the academia, the board comprises of members of other associations. But madam, the School of Planning and Architecture is a professional discipline. Many of our students will leave this institute and go and work in professional design institutes. Some of them will work in professional consulting firms. Is it not necessary that we have somebody from the industry also to be on the board to be there, even if for a short tenure of 2 years, as opposed to the 5-year tenure that you have, just to come on there and give the necessary industry experience and also provide the real world experience that we need in our classrooms. Thirdly, sir, the bill provides 50 crores to the institute in Bhopal, 30 crores to the institute in Vijayawada, and 5 crores in support of planned support to the institute in Delhi. Sir, these institutes are going to be the pillars of excellence, not only for the next 5 years or 10 years, but for the next 50 years. This amount of 50 crores, 30 crores, and 5 crores at some point will prove to be insufficient. And that is why I again ask the ministry to have a separate board, which is a fundraising board, which will comprise of representatives from the industry, whose sole objective is to ensure that this institute becomes a global leader amongst all the schools of planning and architecture, and of course gives the school the necessary corpus support so they can have the best of laboratories, they can have the best of systems, and the best of faculty. It is important, sir, that these members, which is the fundraising advisory board, provide the necessary financial advice to these institutes so that whatever corpus they have, they can provide the necessary investment advice, whether to invest them in mutual funds or any long-term other pension funds. A lot of universities across the world become independent of government support through the active fundraising efforts of their alumni as well as of their board, and this is what helps them get the best of faculty, get the best of systems, and provide the maximum number of scholarships. So fundraising is a very important part. Lastly, sir, I would come in my conclusion. It is very important in our current environment that we must promote a scientific temper in education. Education is the pillar of our society. It is through the road of education that any great society is formed. When India won its hard-fought independence, our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru ji, at that point of time envisioned of IIT, at that point of time envisioned All India Institute of Medical Sciences, at that point of time Indian Institute of Management. Despite facing severe criticism that the country of India was only having 50% literacy rate, the first Prime Minister of India envisioned a bold institute that would still stand the test of time. Until today, our students vie and compete with each other to get into an IIT, to get into an IIM, to get into an AIMS. So this is the kind of scientific temper that we must push and inculcate in our discourse in our environment. But sir, there is we have to be cautious that what we are also gradually seeing is that this scientific temper, scientific environment is gradually being eroded, and science is being mixed with religion, science is being mixed with mythology. We must accord due respect and understand that there is a separation that exists, and we must ensure the sovereignty of these institutes and do not dictate what students eat, whether it's vegetarian food or non-vegetarian food. We should not dictate what students wear. We should focus on how do our students become the best students, how do our institutes become the best students, best institutes. I do not think by promoting vegetarian food in IITs, we will make sure that the IITs are the top-ranked engineering institute. So therefore, we must be careful that we must have our ministers not talk about Rakshasas, but talk about technology, talk about satellites, talk about landing on the moon, because that is the vision of the first Prime Minister of India, Shri Jawaharlal Nehru ji, and we must salute his vision, and that is the vision of education, and we hope that this government will be an education government. We hope that this Prime Minister will be an education Prime Minister and will teach that climate change is real, and as opposed to his other speeches where he has discouraged the theory of climate change. This Prime Minister, I hope, will encourage genetic research and not confuse with mythology. We must accord due respect to science, due respect to religion, due respect to mythology, and let us not confuse our students. We want our students to be the best in the world. We want our institutes to be the best in the world. And with that, I fully support this bill. I'm always happy when Education Minister is here. I feel personally, being from Assam, that we have a second minister from Assam, as the minister is the daughter-in-law of a district. So we always feel happy of Dubri. So we always feel happy. And I'm sure, madam, if you're kind enough, you will provide a School of Planning and Architecture in your district in Assam. Thank you very much.
As far as the